you've got a WhatsApp group about my rants, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That one will make it in there.
Yeah, okay.
What's the biggest sacrifice you've made to get to this point?
So startup mode was literally sat by a pool on holiday on a laptop for 8 hours, and then I could switch off in the evening. But now the scaling up part is probably more. We've got more staff. We've got 4 premises. You've got all the things that go with that.
You're an entrepreneur yourself. I mean, you're mainly industrial automation's version of Alan Partridge, and we're very grateful that you're in that role. But
Cut that bit out.
No, we're not cutting that out. One thing I would always say about the vision element of Automate UK as a set of people really believe in their technology and they really think it's cool. And
yeah, it's because they're all nerds.
It's not that I'm crying or anything.
You're crying? Wow.
So this is the funny thing, right? We have a big supplier. We bought another supplier. And when they were starting to get to know us, they would literally say, you guys are just nerds, right? They're asking, how many millions are you going to ship this quarter? And we're getting nuts and bolts into, well, this customer's got to deal with this algorithm and we've got to do this and everything like that. And you can see it's like
bullshit or backbone. Should have a little egg timer.
This is Manufacturing Uncensored. No safe answers, no PR.
Today we're talking machine vision. What's working, what's overhyped, and why UK adoption isn't keeping pace with Europe. Machine vision promises to make factories smarter, faster, and error-free. Is it actually living up to the hype, or is it just another buzzword?
Oh, straight into it. I think it's a bit of both, right? So I think it can live up to the hype. I think there's still that ability for that to happen, but it's still not an easy, technology to implement all the time. So if you've got the knowledge, then that's possible.
So where does it fall apart then?
I think knowledge sometimes. I think people trying to do things that they can't do.
We're talking end users.
I'm talking end users. I'm talking system integrators, machine builders. The pitfalls of machine vision is sometimes the most simplest thing, like getting the right lens or the right illuminator. And so if you haven't got that right, then the rest is really difficult.
Do you think people take too much of a simplistic approach to it still?
I think it depends, right? So I think with AI, there's the opportunity of AI and what it can do, but then it's like, AI will fix it. And I think that leads people down a kind of false path, if that makes sense.
I fear that we got a situation where you look at, I know we had Rosie on episode 1, robotics, everybody wants to over-spec a robotics project. I fear that you guys are kind of sometimes still a little bit the afterthought, and everybody thinks about the Cognex barcode scanner of 20 years ago and not actually how to do the application properly.
Yeah, so if you think about like robotics, pick and place, for example, I don't want to say the robotics part is easy, but it's well understood.
We know the people it's easy, right? It's just plug and play.
So I don't want to go there, but but the vision part's like really, really hard.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's like, did anyone think about that? And so it tends to be an afterthought on some applications.
Is it not that the end user just sees it as a black box?
I think they'd like to think of it as a black box and for it to be someone else's problem, because the reality is that sometimes it can feel for end users or people that are coming at it from fresh that it's so complicated. It's like, where do you start when you're talking about algorithms or you're talking about really complex illumination or whatever? It's like you kind of feel like it's a nerd conversation as opposed to actually properly implementing something. So I think that's the issue we've got.
Okay, before we jump into any segments then, what gives you the authority to be answering machine vision questions?
So I've been doing this all my career. So I've been doing this for nearly 30 years. So I started...
No, you can't be that old.
Yeah.
You started at 10, yeah?
Yeah, that's what they say. But obviously, I look like a young spring chicken.
Yeah.
But no, I'm, 21, started in machine vision, fell into it and as an engineer, and then went into sales and started ClearView 18 years ago. And so, I've been doing this 29 years. So hopefully I know enough to be confident in what I'm talking about when it comes to machine vision.
Should we unpack that bit? What led you to start ClearView then? It's never as simple as I was a sales guy and I started a business. No,
so I think probably part of it is probably wasn't very good at being told what to do. And I think in my previous role I was working for Matrox for 10 years. I was working with distributors and I kind of got my first sort of insights to entrepreneurs and businesses, and I just loved it. I loved what they were doing. So that's kind of where it started.
How did it start?
Well, I mean, so I was working for Northern Europe, working with distributors, traveling around, seeing how they solve problems. And I kind of got far away from the technology in the job that I was doing, sales manager.
Yeah.
And I'm an engineer at heart. I wanted to solve problems. And so I guess from frustration, I think seeing some distributors become quite, not value adds, so shifting boxes, and then seeing some distributors who had engineering teams, and that's what we've got, and not just, selling a product and shipping the box in sort of thing, actually adding value. And I think there's probably curiosity there, sort of a bit of dangerous curiosity sometimes of, I thought I could do it better.
Yeah.
And so that led to where we are today.
I mean, I think there's a couple of things off the back of that. One is I have huge appreciation for what you do because I MBO'd mine, so it already existed. So I had basically a list of how to run the business and how not to run the business.
Yeah.
And I had a structure around me where you basically started afresh with concepts, but quite a low general management experience, right?
Massively.
Yeah.
But I think it's naivety, if I'm honest with you. I look back, 18 years. I think it's probably took me 10 years to figure out how to run a business.
Yes.
I was basically running around and was massively, the thing with vision is it can lead you to lots of different paths. So one day you can be supplying cameras to someone doing golf swing analysis. Next day we're in a chicken factory doing label verification stuff, and everything connected to that. And so no 2 days are the same, and that's amazing. And then if I knew what I know now, I probably wouldn't have started a business. The stress that comes with it, the pitfalls of everything, and then literally just not knowing what I was doing.
Yeah.
There's MBAs and stuff like that, but for the level I was at, there was no MBA. It was just running around and trying to figure stuff out.
Also, I think MBAs are amazing. What's the official line on MBAs? Automate UK Sports MBAs. Also, I think MBAs are crap for being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just system, and you can fall down a corporate ladder. And you've got to blend personality with system to make an SME work and set your own thing up.
Yeah,
right?
They have their place. But the vast majority of businesses in the UK are SMEs.
Yeah.
And so, if everyone needed to go on a course to run a business, we wouldn't have any businesses. So there's so many people out there that probably like me that didn't know what they were doing and just kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, that's how it was.
What's been the hardest part?
I think there's different phases, right? So starting up, I don't think was that difficult. I think, it was 2008, all the different financial crashes were going on. But, I hired 2 people to join straight away. It wasn't difficult. It was like we were super hungry. We were like eager to get business. Scaling up is harder, so then growing into 3 additional countries, putting investments in like this office and other investments, and then trying to grow, that's harder. So I think scaling is harder than starting, depending on the industry you're in. I think that was kind of a bit of an open door.
I'm there. I mean, I think, we MBO'd, so mine was easier. Yeah, I had a thing, and the thing was just about profitable. We took it on, right? But we had to flip ours because it would have died because it was just sell. Yeah. We needed to be a service provider. And there was easy wins like recruit a couple of service engineers, have a ad hoc CRM, and away off you go. Scaling up, nobody tells you about that. Is scaling up is bloody hard. And then the other thing is as well, law of sod is just after you scaled up, there's a knock, right? And I just think about it, you go, oh great, we've taken all these engineers, done this CRM, and then you have the quietest month you've had in about 2-3 years. You go, oh my God, I've just done it, I've just ruined it all. Yeah. And scaling up is so hard. And I think the other thing is, and I don't know if you attest to that, because you and I have similar but different styles, is that you and I are very personality led and we want the best from our people. And I think we take the responsibility of having our staff responsibility. So when you scale a business up and then you go, have I made it right? You're not just feeling it from off your own back, you're feeling 100%. It off your staff's back. And nobody tells you what that feels like, right?
Yeah, it's kind of obvious in a way, but I'm responsible for 20 odd people. their families, their bills and everything like that. And maybe that's not important for some people, but genuinely it is. And it's, and in a way it's heavy. You're trying to get it right for me and my family, but the wider business and making sure everyone's happy and stuff. And it's a challenge. It's not just about technology. It's not just about customers. It's the whole thing, right?
There's a whole. You could do a whole piece. I think there's this perception in this country that I think I've said it on a previous podcast. The perception in this country that business owners, we just want to maximise profit, make ourselves as rich as possible. We do a bit, but moreover, we actually believe in our thing, we believe in our people, and we want to support our people. And there's a level of jeopardy on that, which I think gets undervalued. It's recognised in other countries. You're doing stuff in Europe, I'm doing stuff in the USA. That is felt, right? It's like, well done on owning a business and looking after your people. Whereas here, it's like, even governmental with some of the taxation stuff we've done, right, is that the government's done. It's like you own a business, so you're just basically Scrooge trying to maximize the profit and walk away. Yeah. That ain't the case, right?
No, I think it goes back to the earlier point, right? So I think this country is amazing to start a business. Yeah. And I've done that in Germany, France and Spain, so I can tell you it's much easier to start something here than it is anywhere. But scaling a business here versus maybe something like the US, I think it's harder. Yeah. So I think, businesses can get more support, I think, to scale. And it's not just finance, it's mentoring, it's making sure you know how to run a business and all those good things.
It's also accepting failure. The US is quite big. Like, if you're a multiple time startup founder and you've failed multiple times, then it's a great thing on your
badge
CV.
Of honour.
It's a badge of honour.
Yes. Yeah. You've been through it. Whereas here, if I'm thinking this is failing, I'm thinking this isn't going to look good on LinkedIn.
No, exactly. Right. And it's that. I mean, I've had it before. Is that I had this weird situation when I was first chair. Is that we went quiet off the back of Liz Truss at our place, and I was stood on stage because I didn't. I did that stupid thing, not off ego, but when everybody asked me when I first became chair in 2023, people were like, "Oh, will you come and talk to this?" And I felt I had to rather than I wanted to. I didn't want to most of the time. I had quite a bit of imposter syndrome, but at the same time, I'm going, "This is amazing." I'm portraying it like a shit Steve Bartlett. And at the same time, I know that the office phone has gone so quiet, we've actually checked it's plugged in.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, you're right, that would be like, you tried, it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
Whereas here that jeopardy is on you. And that prejudice, right? I think the other thing is as well is that I think there's that corporate versus SME prejudice. We are not considered in the same way as a corporate person. And I think you got this judgy side thing that there's a corporate society that quite likes it that people like Allan and I might fail, if I'm being very honest with you. And the reason for that is, deep down, they know they can't do what he and I can do. Yeah, let's cut to the chase. What you're doing as well, right? I mean, you're an entrepreneur yourself. You're mainly industrial automation's version of Alan Partridge, and we're very grateful that you're in that role. But
cut that bit out, John.
No, we're not cutting that out. I'm not cutting that out. But there's that prejudice, right? Is that people almost in this country want you to fail.
Well, look. So when I started my business, for the first 2 or 3 years, founder, managing director of ClearView, I had sales manager on my own business cards. But I think back and I think, what was I thinking? I was almost a bit embarrassed the fact that I ran my own company. And I think it's that. Maybe that's just me.
See,
maybe that's just me.
I had to do it the other way around because we thought we were raising investment, and all these VCs were like, "Well, you need CEO and your co-founder needs CTO."
Yeah.
Because it's that American mindset. Yeah, so then we've got all these business cards printed, and then people look at it like, "Oh, how many people do you employ?" Well, it's just us two. Two co-founders.
Exactly. And you look, there's kind of fake it till you make it, and then there's the opposite way maybe. I was, slightly different, right, in a way, but.
Yeah. Obviously this part's very important. I think in general anyway, in society, just because people don't talk about sacrifice, and within the membership, there's going to be a lot of people like you two that probably need to hear stories. So I think sacrifice is something that I want to push probably both of you on actually. What's the biggest sacrifice you've made to get to this point?
A lot of lost sleep, a lot of stress, a lot of worry. I think that pushing and trying to grow and scale. So, I've sacrificed building a new home for my family to build this. That's the biggest sacrifice, so, and I don't think a lot of the team know that, certainly the wider public wouldn't know that, but my family know that. And so there's time where it would have been easier to, I need to start again there. It's not that I'm crying or anything.
You're crying? Wow.
No, I'm not. I literally had a frog in my throat. Yeah, no. So it's the sacrifice of that, right? And so, literally not going home one day and saying we can't build a new house, which is like first world problems, right? Versus the decision to go ahead with this. And so that's the biggest sacrifice I've made.
Same. I mean, I think every time we've got close to doing up the house we've lived in for 13 years, there's been something that's maybe gone, I think we'll just hold fire. I know the hob's only got one hob left on it, but, let's just hold fire, right?
Yeah.
But, and it sorts out well. And the other thing is the time, and you don't shut off. I think the people element would be that. I don't care so much about the contractual side anymore, because it will always find a route. So if we've got a sticky job or something like that, it will find a route, and I've got muscle memory. But the amount, you never shut off fully. You're thinking about your business all the time, and you have to learn how to think about other things at the same time. But the people bit, I would say, you never shut off. I was like almost, and you have to be careful that you don't go too far. But this morning in the hotel, I was almost like the dad of the business, right? Well, so-and-so's doing this. Are they okay? This going okay? And checking that my people are okay, I would say, is the biggest sacrifice. And I would say then not being able to shut off when I've got them on different time zones is probably my new problem. I have like probably 4 or 5 people in the US semi-permanently now. Luckily only 5 hours behind us at the moment, and I'm still thinking about what they're doing. Not whether they're doing it right, because I believe in my people, not whether it's going to sort a contractual issue out, because if we have a contractual issue, we'll just sort it. But actually, are they okay? So it's the time sacrifice. And the financial sacrifice is another thing, right? Is that, as you're saying, with house building and me holding back on maybe foreign holidays, there's been times I haven't paid myself.
Yeah, I'll go with that. I mean, like early on, I've definitely not fully enjoyed holidays. I've been sat, by the side of a pool on a laptop all day. And my wife's been great all the way through, so we've been married, 15 years, we're together for 20. So she's only ever known me running a business. And so incredibly supportive, but I think that prior to running ClearView, I probably was able to switch off a lot. And then there's different modes. So startup mode was literally sat by a pool on holiday, on a laptop for 8 hours, and then I could switch off in the evening. But, now the scaling up part is probably more, we've got more staff, we've got, 4 premises, you've got all the things that go with that. And so, it's mind share. It's making sure that I'm present, and and I'm thinking about work a lot, whether I'm driving to work, whether I'm waking up in the middle of the night, or whether I'm out running or something like that. There's not a lot of times when I'm probably not thinking about how to solve something or sort something. So
Where are you at with imposter syndrome?
I think I'm probably better now than I used to be. So when you and I have been on the board of directors for 8 years, when I remember first going into board meetings, it was really terrifying. You've got these, it was sort of different generations. So I think James and I have seen the board transition into a more modern board that I feel is a modern board, but maybe others don't feel is a modern board. Maybe there's that going on. But I looked at the directors that were on there at the time, and it was quite a sort of high testosterone, banging on tables, lots of shouting at each other. And it's like, what's going on here, sort of thing. So, and the powerful people in the room had their say, no one else had their say. And I don't think that's the case now. No. So I think if we talk about imposter syndrome early on there, I would definitely think I'm in the wrong room here.
What about imposter syndrome running this place? So I'll give you an example. I filled out the forms to lease 4 new vans last week to replace 4 vans, yeah, and it will go through. It will be fine. I have a good credit rating. But I had like this weird anxiety. You know, it takes about 2 hours for my lease company to say you're good. And I had 2 hours of weird anxiety. I'm not worthy of these vans. Well, of course you're worthy. You're not new. They're replacing them. I'm not worthy. I'm just doing this. Oh my God, it's going to fail. It's not going to go through because I did this. And you know, one year we made a slight loss, and they're going to know I made a slight loss. And
why is that personal though? Because it's a business.
Because you feel. I think sometimes as an SME, you feel you're not worthy. And look, I think you've experienced this a bit as well. Is that when sometimes you're chancing it a bit. And you're flying a bit close to the wind and you're worried it's going through. What you don't realise is that sometimes that keeps on rolling. So this was a formality. I'm replacing 4 vans with 4 vans. But the lease going through and the finance going through, absolutely fine. But I had like these 2 hours later, oh my God, they're going to remember this. And I'm just a fool who's running a little business.
Yeah.
And
no, I mean, so in machine vision, and maybe we'll talk about this later, I've definitely seen there's some really big organisations involved now, right? So there might be a case where, little old ClearView mentality comes in. Yeah. But in the end, also I think, I'm probably more confident now in what we're doing and what I'm doing maybe than I was 6, 7, 8 years ago. Yeah. So, but I 100% still get it. It's not that, but it's not as much as it used to be.
Do you think anyone could be an entrepreneur?
I think you've got to want to do it, right? So I think, I've got 2 sons, right? 12 and 8. And, I think most of us parents think about our kids and what they're going to do and stuff like that. And I wonder, they're watching me and, do they want to get involved in being an entrepreneur? I think it's innate within certain personalities. I think that's more the answer. I think there's nothing wrong going and working for a company or working for multiple companies and stuff, because it's what that person wants to do. I think, I probably wasn't very good at being told what to do. And I have like this creative brain that ClearView has been amazing for me. So I've been able to do really what I've wanted to do. So there's that creative license. But that's my personality. Whereas I think different personalities might want more structure or the guarantee of a pay slip every month, without the jeopardy and all this sort of stuff, right?
Some people just need to be led, and that's fine. I think I think everybody should give it a go, right? But I think there's a natural talent behind it. I think there's not natural, there's a natural skill behind it rather than talent. Is that you've got to be self-motivating. You've got to be clear about that that you've got to have a lot of fight in you, and you've got to be able to absorb a truckload of jeopardy. Now, I think everybody should try it, and if we have the American culture that failure doesn't matter, it will be okay. But you see some people who will think they've got a good idea and then go and do it, but have been so used to working for other people, it just doesn't happen. And you go, well, no, because when you had the first knock, you just stopped, and you go, that's that, rather than, you got to be prepared. I mean, you'll be the same. If Grumwald stops making pot filling machines, and I need to go and buy a fleet of ice cream vans on eBay to keep the thing going, I'll do that. And you'll be the same, right? If you have to turn this into a bowling alley and it's ClearView bowling, you'll do it. And and you're doing it, right, with what you're doing with Engineering Insights. If Engineering Insights ends up being a cafe in Coventry, so be it. Because you want to keep your own thing going.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, if the business fails, could you then go and work for someone? Or once you've done it, you have to be an entrepreneur? Because I think about this a lot. If the business failed, do I just go and work for an industrial automation company again? Probably not. I'd fucking hate it.
So I think for me, it depends on the environment, right? So I think, if I was able to work with the right people and be, given the right remit, then yeah, I don't think it's impossible. I think if I was working in a place where it was really constrained and wasn't able to do the things that bring out the best in me, then I would really struggle.
I think the right remit is the right bit, and that's the point. Is that I've seen people whose businesses have been taken over and they've been kept in position, and they've failed because they can't work for people because they forget that they're supposed to ask. It's not like a big process. Oh, I'm supposed to ask that person before I spend $100,000 on a machine tool. But there's the right remit bit is that people who get taken over or people who work somewhere else, is that if Alan and I went and did the same jobs at our competitors, we'd probably fail. But if our competitors took us on to maybe integrate into a new market or look at to do the strategy and the mentoring piece, we would succeed. That would be it, is that I think if we went and worked for people, you might feel different. It could work, but it couldn't be doing exactly the same role we're doing at Grumwald and ClearView now. It would be more, you see it with Peter. I mean, Peter Williamson, left RAR, is with us at Automate. Peter's adding value, but he's not being a managing director of another robotics business. Yeah. If he'd gone to another cobot business, he probably wouldn't worked out successfully as it has for him. But he's using it in the right remit. That's important.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Shall we start talking about industry? Because I've got a segment for headlines, so I'll go through some headlines, things that are happening right now, and we'll try and beat you up on them. So the first one's around industry or UK car production. So I found a study that had come out this month.
So you found it or ChatGPT?
No, I did, thank you.
You did your own?
Yeah, I asked ChatGPT to find me a study. UK car production has fallen 17% in the past 12 months. Now, I know machine vision is quite big in automotive. Mm-hmm. So does this mean that people like yourself have to find other markets, or are we staying strong in automotive?
So I think it depends on the company, right? So one of the things that we are very fortunate at ClearView is we have a huge spread of customers in loads of different industries, and that's partly UK centric. Whereas if we were in the US, or if we were in, I don't even like parts of Spain, Valencia area where it might be heavily automotive, for example, then if we had all our eggs in automotive, then I think we'd feel that. And so I think in the UK, most vision companies won't be so affected by that. I think the kind of the ones, whether it be some of the more traditional like Cognix or Isra Vision or something like that they might be more affected. So it's not good. It kind of trickles down, doesn't it? It's not just it's all the associated industries as well as. But I think in the UK, especially for us, we're a bit more diluted.
So what is your spread? What is it that you go after?
Yeah, so we're dealing with the vast majority would be OEM customers, so who are building vision systems and they're taking cameras from us, and so they could be working in fields like scientific, logistics, food and bev, all the way through. So really, really wide range.
Obviously you strategize all that, but how do you manage the spread?
Well, yeah, so sometimes when people are getting to know our business, it's like, why do you focus on, the question we'll get is, why do you focus on so many markets? It's because vision is applicable to those markets. We don't have to be experts in scientific markets or, sports analysis or, food inspection. We just have to be experts in the components that are used. So when we then have dialogue with customers and they want to know how to take a camera or a lens or an illuminator or software, based on conversations, we can help them get the best out of those things. So, but it's really varied, and it's one day we could be dealing with customers who are literally taking cameras and putting them in golf swing analysis, or there's.
Have you noticed he's obviously trying to picture the golf market? Is that a growth area?
It's just an installing, can't forget it.
Yeah.
There's other examples like in clubs in London, like darts clubs, flight club and stuff like that using machine vision. We've worked on stuff in the past where, around football stadiums, you've got advertising boards and you would see certain adverts in the stadium, but in China or in Germany or in other parts of England, you would see adverts superimposed on there, and that's using near infrared backboard illuminators with near infrared cameras and stuff like that. So that's more kind of computer vision rather than machine vision. But as a distributor of machine vision components, but we also have our own engineering team, and they will then help customers develop solutions. That tends to be more machine vision. But the UK market's really spread, so it can be literally, food and bev is quite heavy right now because there's label inspection. There can be things where connected to robots and stuff like that. So that's the big growth area, I'd say. But it's varied.
Yeah, who gives a toss about automotive? I mean,
it's a good point, though. No, it's a good point, because I think the point I draw in there is that the UK market is lucky that we're not tied to one industry, whereas if we were, or maybe it's just more ClearView, then we would be in trouble.
No, but you're right. I mean, so he gives us hospital both all of us for GDP. That I understand, but the UK has the ability to offer options from industrial vision through to making a bit of conveyor in so many different markets within the same postcode compared to other people. And we go down this route of, automotive, Airbus, right? And it doesn't actually tell you the story. You look at what's going on in food and bev, you look what's going on in logistics, right? And you go, there's actually some applications, and some applications that feed creativity. If you're doing a vision system for building the next generation of, Range Rover or Vogue, in essence, it's the same vision system, but everything moves a little bit because the line might be going faster and the car's a bit big. I simplify, right? But if you are, doing a camera system to verify bottled water at 25,000 bottles an hour, and there's 100 different types of bottles and 10 different types of bottles, that is actually a better application. I really struggle. I'm ranting. I really struggle. I'll do lipstick in a pig on it. I really struggle with. I mean, I get why you're asking the question, and it's important to know, right? Because automotive can create big downturns. You saw what that cyber attack did to JLR last year, and we all
and everyone in the supply chain.
We all felt it, right, a bit, because it all knocks on through, to people. But the creativity in this country and is in food and bev, it's in intralogistics, it's even in healthcare. It's not actually the traditional ones.
No.
And those who keep agile to it.
Yeah, look, I mean, and I see the trends. So there's like technology trends, and then there's industry trends. So over the last few years in our industry, like 3D vision technology has grown incredibly. AI stuff has come on a lot and making more complex things easier to do. And then you've got non-visible imaging, so like near infrared, hyperspectral. And where the latter comes in is like, all those recycling lines, for example, that's huge amounts of automation that can go on there with robots and with vision. Transport and logistics, before Zebra acquired Matrox, I didn't really fully understand how big that industry is. I just used to think, it's just barcode reading. How difficult can that be? But then you're using 3D cameras to do volumetric, measurement of boxes. You're using AI to see if boxes are damaged and stuff like that. You can use thermal imaging to see if batteries are overheating. So there's two things there. And some of those industries don't really fully understand the technology that's there, but that's where we sit. So you see the industry, you see the technology, and it's then sort of marrying those two things up. That's where there's going to be huge growth in the UK with vision.
Recycling for vision, I think that's going to be huge. Yeah. How you penetrate that, I don't know, but the applications you can do in there are massive and exciting, right?
Yeah, really, and so that's where hyperspectral. We're getting really technical now, but this is so as a company, I have to be careful of how much evangelism we do as a business. So our sales guys are very technical and they like new things, and so hyperspectral cameras is basically about seeing things in multiple different wavelengths and then picking things out. So if you're trying to do recycling and you've got all these different materials, you're gonna be able to see different things with different wavelengths, right? So that's incredibly exciting in terms of the business opportunity that brings to automate, and that goes hand in hand with robotics. And then food as well, right? So food sorting lines. We have some of the biggest machine builders, around. So Tomra, companies like Beulah, taking really advanced, non-visible imaging and then using that to do, sorting of whatever food is online and stuff like that. So that's going to drive growth in our industry massively.
And are you upskilling the OEM or upskilling the end user to get these lines
So
live?
I think it's a bit of both. So there's two parts to our business. So we will supply components and technology to OEMs. They tend to be really, advanced in their understanding of their particular market. Then you've got the machine builders and system integrators. So we typically wouldn't deal with end users, unless they've got their own machine vision teams. So, but typically you've got a system integrator or machine builder, and then they will go and solve a problem for an end user. And it's trying to educate those guys. So this building's been built for that purpose, whether it's training courses, whether it's seminars, whether it's bringing people through here. And so that's really kind of my statement right now. Technology isn't a problem in machine vision, it's knowledge. It's and our job is to educate people on what's out there, and then more importantly, how to actually do something with that. And so that's what's holding vision back. Different parts of robotics will be held back in different ways. You're talking a lot about, government lobbying, mindset, that's CapEx, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of exists for vision, but a lot of it is actually having the knowledge. So having, not just 20 system integrators that know what they're doing, having 5,000, that's the bit that's going to be the tipping point for vision.
Knowledge it's just another form of the knowledge gap that we have on technology in this country, right? At least vision's cool. There's an element to it. I think there is one thing I would always say about the vision element of Automate UK is that they, as a set of people, really believe in their technology and they really think it's cool. And
that's because they're all nerds.
Yeah. So this is the funny thing, right? So I recently, I won't mention the exact company, but we have a big supplier who bought another supplier, and when they were starting to get to know us, they would literally say, as politely as possible, "You guys are just nerds, right?"
Yeah.
And so my first reaction to that was one of like, "I'm not a nerd. I'm not a nerd." But then, the conversations we're having, so they're asking, how many millions are you going to ship this quarter? And we're getting, nuts and bolts into, well, this customer's got to deal with this algorithm and we've got to do this and everything like that. And you can see it's like, so for that part, I understand that we can be perceived as nerds. But my reflection on that is that there's still a lot of misunderstanding of what's required in vision.
Yes.
So to have a very simplistic OCR system or barcode reading system, but that's not necessarily where the growth is. You have to actually understand about vision. And so this for us is the opportunity, because we know what we're doing. We're not perfect, but we have a good range of knowledge. But we get the label of nerds, and it's like, now I'm like, I'm good with that, because it's okay, we're nerds because we know what we're doing.
To offset the nerd tag, they have a level of community as an industry sector. So what I'm touched about, I know I attended one of your UKIVA meetings a couple of years ago, which was interesting.
Lively.
I brought some energy to the room. But if you get a load of comparatives, so if you got me and my other competitors in a room, it becomes quite chest beaty, right? And the robotics guys, probably on the industrial, there's a bit of community on Cobot, but on the robotics guys, the industrial guys, it's quite chest beaty. You get them together, even direct competitors, and there's this community bit. They all take the view that there's enough work for all of them. Well, and you're very good at not comparing business strategy, but the technical strategy bit you are very good at as a sector.
Yeah, so I think we are like really strong competitors, and we will go and try and beat each other and win and all that sort of stuff. But our industry is growing, and it can be seen in UKIVA meetings, right? So there was one kind of insightful kind of jokey bit recently. We were talking about ROI, and I joked that a few years ago we were talking about region of interest, in terms of some CMOS like sort of feature, whereas now we're talking about return on investment. And so in the room, the UKIVA guys, we kind of had to go on this journey of and that's the machine vision sort of industry in general. It's becoming more professional. It's becoming more enterprise level. And I think that's really exciting because it means that there's the opportunities there. You know, big companies are buying big companies and the industry is growing. So, but, you know, you being in the room or you know, the journey we've gone on with Automate and the automation show, I think for vision and the Kiva side of things is really important. You know, we've had the Machine Vision Conference for many years, which we did. And if you think about that knowledge statement I'm making, that served its purpose to try to educate as many people. But it could be seen as a nerd conference, right? Whereas now we're having more commercial discussions about how do you implement vision on a factory floor? How do you make that happen?
If you just look at Automate UK, and it's, I don't know how many members it's got, I'll make it up. It's 2,500 members. I don't know how many we got. Some members. We have some members.
Do you chair, right?
Yes. Although it's 2026, I'm changing it to chair. I'm going to be chair from now on. We'll get there in the end, is without industrial vision, PPMA membership, bar membership actually fails. They are actually the route to success. And let me explain that. So with driving down headcount in every kind of factory, with there not being the labour for every kind of factory, and speeds going up, whatever you are making, there has to be industrial vision in any manufacturing process in the next decade for that line to be successful. You know, we've just done, sorry, coughing. We've just done a line that does 30,000 cups of yogurt an hour. And it's got every single technology on it, from mechanical engineering to robotics to hydraulics to everything on it. All of that £3.8 million worth of machine is useless if the £150,000 worth of vision system at the end, which basically makes packaging verification, orientation, that things are on correctly so that the palletizer doesn't fail. And you look at it, even people who are making tanks and vessels and processing equipment for, I don't know, powders for pharmaceuticals, liquids, right? They are now colour matching using industrial vision that they've made the right product, or their density matching. So industrial vision, I know it sounds harsh, but if robotics didn't actually go any further technically in advancement for the next 20 years, wouldn't make a difference, right? I mean, robotics people disagree. People making packaging machinery, I didn't develop, and God, I'm a glorified sales guy. If we didn't develop the Grunwald machines any further in the next 20 years, we just did the same ones, right? Wouldn't make a fundamental difference. The difference is upscaling. The application of industrial vision is the success for the uptake of automation in any industry. If industrial vision doesn't develop, doesn't get adopted, isn't successfully run, really the whole gig's off.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I agree.
You were shocked to say something nice about industrial vision.
I do agree with what you're saying. I think it's mindset as well. So it's maybe fear of understanding what vision can do and hearing stories of it going wrong or whatever. And there's sort of two camps. You've got customers that are thinking about how to use it well. There's things where it's like ambulance chasing business. So if something's gone wrong on the line, quickly go and get vision companies involved. 3 quotes. Let's see how we get on. And it's the companies that think about this properly that will be the ones that get it right, as opposed to the ones that are consistently thinking of it as sort of ambulance chasing type, you know, business to stop, you know, an EPW or something like that that's happened.
So what fascinates me always with people like yourselves running the business, obviously I run a one-trick pony, and we give it a double espresso lipstick on a Monday, slap it on its arse, and off we go. But I just do one thing, and I do it in more markets. You could be all things to all men. So how do you make sure your bandwidth isn't too narrow, and how do you make sure your bandwidth isn't too wide?
Yeah, so our whole business is built on our knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So that's first and foremost. And then there'll be some of our competitors that have really wide product portfolios. And we get lots of calls from, you know, new suppliers that want to work with us, and it's invariably no. because we can't be experts in that.
Yeah.
So with the team that we've got, we have to go really narrow on the product range and then understand that technology and all the products within as much as possible. Otherwise, people just buy stuff off a website. So that's kind of where I'm going in terms of answering that. And what I can't stop is the fact that a camera or illuminator or a bit of software can be used in all those different, really wide, industries and applications and stuff like that. That's just vision. So if you want to use it, we talked about golf, or if you want to use it on, label verification, that's the customer will choose that. And again, we don't have to be experts in those industries. We just have to be experts in the products we sell and the technology we sell. And I think that's a kind of a recipe for success for us.
Are you targeting by sector in terms of turnover sales?
No, I mean, we want to, if we think about, one of the pivots recently we've gone to, we've now got an e-commerce site, and it's there to make things easier for customers. But in the end, we have some very experienced, intelligent sales guys, and they're there for key accounts. They're there to have key account management, but to also help those customers in a really sort of deep and meaningful way. But then we have our own engineering team. So some distributors don't have that. We have software engineers, we have application engineers. So you get your samples sent to us from customers. We'll do a proof of concept. We've got those application engineers that are there to then train the engineers of customers and stuff like that. So it's not just about having operations, a warehouse, salespeople, and some marketing people and just sort of shipping stuff out. Yeah. The most important thing that we've got is transferring that knowledge through might be application engineers doing a training course or doing a proof of concept or something like that. So that's a really important thing for us.
Yeah.
I think we've done that one to death. Headline number one.
So it's headline
Do we
number
forget
one?
that we were still in that segment?
I mean, we're supposed to have a structure to this. It's kind of...
Yeah. Headline number two.
We just get them to say bullshit or backbone 5 times. You just click it up, right? Yeah. Just say bullshit, right?
There's currently around 50,000 open vacancies in UK manufacturing. However, every young person I speak to says they can't find a job. So what's the disconnect?
It's a crazy stat, right? And when I do end up going to manufacturing sites, the consistent theme is they're short on labour, and ever since we've changed things from Brexit, I always kind of felt, especially in the food and bev industry, British manufacturing is kind of quite sort of hooked on low cost labour, and so. I don't know if I've quite got the perfect answer to that in many ways, right? So I don't know whether the jobs are shifting.
Is it that young people are too expensive?
I think that's are they? Is it catching that people are getting offered jobs but don't fancy doing that job, for example, based on the wage, or based on the things that person would have to do? I don't know. But there's a disconnect in the fact that I see companies needing labour, and then there's a stat like that there's people out of work, and so it has to be, there's a mismatch somewhere, whether it is the salary's paid or
you got a lot of elements. That's a big question. The first thing is you have a government. Ultimately, that's the responsibility of the government, right? I mean, we had Martin on one of the podcasts who basically said, we can do all the stuff in the world. A bit of it's government, like retraining is part of the government. If you don't have a government that can't be bothered to put the join up in, it's not going to happen. I suppose there are some hopes. Alan Milburn, ex-Labour minister, has just done this thing about how you get the NEETs. What's the NEET? Yeah, 957,000 16 to 24-year-olds who are out of work. But you've got to do the join up because there's many different elements. One is nobody knows where to go. If you pick to do a course, or any course, from an MBA to a week doing flower arranging, we're pretty useless in this country of knowing where the right place is. I think it's fair. I think they don't overlook the effect on COVID still, and that you've got a lot of people that we want to get into industry at the moment are people who had confidence knocks during COVID or lived in an odd term. You know, the people we're now employing are in their early 20s to mid 20s. They're the people who got given GCSE results and A-level results. So there's that bit. And there's also, I think, you just have this whole juxtaposition of companies need to recruit people, but at the same time they're playing it safe because of geopolitical reasons. And you've also got people who want jobs who don't have the confidence to take a punt or have a bit of a misnomer what a role does and what it pays. You know, I started as a project engineer at Regal Packaging, and I only earned £13,000 a year 24 years ago. But I think the one thing that I did have, and you know, it's not what I wanted. At 10 years old, I didn't want to be a project engineer of a pot filling business, but I did have the insight that 13K, if I worked it up, would scale up. You know, and now in 2026,
that's a lot of money back then.
Yeah,
surely.
No, it was. Although to be fair, it was the company was based in Gainsborough.
A million now.
But there was a terraced house for sale for £9,500 when I went there in 2002. You know, and now 24 years later, I'm now earning 15,500. So you know, it's but we don't. People want to earn that amount straight away and don't understand the scale up. And you actually, but they don't understand that actually, if you start as an apprentice, or if you take a step back, it's like when you first go into management, right? When you first go back into management, you tend to take a step back on pay because you don't get overtime. You know, again, when I first went into management jobs, in truth, the first year I probably had about a 5-figure reduction in salary, but I had to do that. And we seem to have lost that. People think that they can earn.
But there's a couple of things there, right? So there's, also when we go back in our careers, it wasn't the cost of living that we've got now, right?
No.
And then you look at, something you said, I agree with, confidence in the market, right? So I might be a little bit more hesitant in wanting to hire to make sure that role. So I think those two things. So I don't want to personally say, I think it's because that generation are lazy and they want loads of money. I think cost of living is higher, and I think that maybe some companies are hesitating. I think we've talked a lot, at board level about apprenticeships and stuff like that. And I think within those sort of three comments, I think there's an answer there. Whether it's apprenticeships are the right route, or whether it's sort of skilling people up, or giving more confidence to companies to hire, which is a bit more macro rather than
Do you have a view on what sort of qualification you would look for in a young person?
So my journey was very different. So I didn't do the traditional. I wouldn't describe myself as academic going through. So I went straight out from half of sixth form, finished the rest off in sort of day release sort of thing, and then I went and did built PCs. So straight away, no minimum wage, right? Much lower. I'm smiling. It was much lower than that. But that was good advice that my parents gave me because I wasn't academic. I was happier to do that. But the cost of living was, so I was earning like crazy low money, but I felt like, I didn't have any money worries. But then I did my degree later on. So, there was a point in time where, I was being held back by that. So I just went and did what I needed to do to then go on the path that I needed to do. So I think it depends on the career the person wants. So for me, when I'm looking and hiring at ClearView, I'm a bit more open-minded in terms of what's possible. I think it's as much about attitude, and so we have one of our core values of growth mindset. So I've seen people here come in, and you look at their results or what they've done, but they've got like an amazing growth mindset. They're gonna conquer the world. Whereas we've also had some of the most intelligent people on paper that haven't gone on to conquer the world. So I don't know if there's any fixed rules there. I think it depends on the individual and their willingness and ability to learn. I think if there's that, and a company will spend the time, with proper investment in people, I think it's as much attitude as it is,
Yeah, I speak to skills hubs quite a bit, and there was one that said to me that they have a pool of talent, all different qualifications, that can't find a job, and the skills hub is actively trying to campaign to all the local manufacturers and no one will take them. And the skills hub don't know what to tell the colleges of like what local business wants out of them, because business won't engage with them. I think, so you've got kids with a BTEC and then a...
But they're not hiring though, right, Tom? So the issue there is it's not like they're hiring a ton of other people. They're just not hiring. Yeah. So that's my point on sort of industry confidence. Whereas I think if they were hiring and all those kids were getting sort of lost, then I think they could figure that out. I don't know the full story, but that's my sense around that more than I think they're hiring from elsewhere and those kids are just getting left behind. I think it's confidence in the market that's stopping hiring happening.
Yeah, I have this elephant in the room conversation sometimes that we do all and I'm doing it, of how we get more kids in. Actually, it's going to come to a point where we get more kids in and there's less and less places for them to work.
Yeah.
I don't think that, from a STEM point of view, I don't perceive that as a problem. If you're in other industries like accountancy or marketing, I think your backside should be doing the 5p, 50p dance of what AI can do. But we might need to edit that out. I try to make that semi-clean, right? But instead, STEM becomes everything, right? So you're probably going to be in a situation with the level of automation in supermarkets that supermarkets are going to need a bigger engineers, right? So from a STEM point of view, I do not perceive that as a problem. Other markets, I think, fair. There is a STEM takeover in every single industry in this country. You go to the City of London and the payroll will have a higher STEM related role to it because of the nature of having to manage what is going on. For AI to be effective, it needs humans to have it be on a service contract to make sure it's doing what it should do, and it's not just doing like Grok and taking clothes off everybody. I simplify, but so I don't actually fear that. We need STEM jobs are exponentially going to grow. Even if manufacturing doesn't grow, STEM jobs are going to grow. I think there's another point actually where I'm really bad, and Samantha, my business partner, is very good, and we'll see if she actually watches the podcast if she referenced this. I always try and look for the perfect fit, not necessarily in terms of personality, but in terms of have they done mechanical engineering, have they done hydraulic engineering, have they done this, have they done that? And I think you'll find that there's quite a few people when they look at anybody, this is not young, this is anybody looking at the perfect fit, where she's very good at, maybe because she's starting in recruitment, she's very good at seeing the pathway for that person to do everything. And her culture needs to be wider. So they're mechanically good, looks like they're not going to say something offensive to either a customer or a member of staff, and they know the difference between lefty, loosey, righty, tighty, and we can build the other 5 things. And some of our best recruits have been the ones where she's actually said, no. We've got these 2-3 skills, the other 7 will follow.
So it's the same, right? So for me, sometimes listening to what books people have read, what podcasts people are listening to, the ones that tend not to do so well, they're not doing anything, right? So it goes back to that growth mindset. So we try to hire for values. Listen, of course, for certain jobs, you need to know certain things. But, for me, I would lean much more on those growth mindset, and can someone actually be open-minded and learn? Personally, that's what's worked well for us.
I'm going to throw it's still skills, but I get asked this quite a lot when I do college stuff. So I'm going to scrap headline 3 and I'm just going to ask you, if you were hiring for a young person, how would that young person stand out?
So we're going through it right now in terms of hiring for like marketing roles and stuff like that. And it's, for me, it's that. So have they done their research? You know, so do they care? Right. So, you know, coming in and you know, we're having a bit of chit chat about, you know, what do you know about ClearView, and they know they've done their research, and you know, they might not be perfect at that, but that shows me they care. And I think you know, it's probably difficult to high stress situation, you know, interviewing, right? You want to feel you say the right things, but for me, it's about really truly listening to that authentic person, and then we'll find a match. So what I mean by that is, you know, understanding if there's a true fit for them, rather than them convincing us at all costs that this is the right place, and then it ends up badly, if that makes sense, right? So, so I think doing research. I think, you know, if there's little side projects that they can do to show. That would blow me away. You know, if I'm like in a meeting and they're like, you know, opening something up, here's something I've done, what do you think of this? I'm like, yeah, sold, sort of thing. So that would be, for my sons, you know, I would be, you know, that's the kind of advice I'd give my own children, as much as anyone out there looking for.
I agree. So, I mean, you kind of build a culture that copies what you do. The best bit's what you do, right? We would recruit anybody, but particularly young people, we've just taken some on the last 3-4 weeks, who self-motivated, half decent grades, but done something away from academia that either relates to technology or relates to people. And that would copy what I did. I did a motor racing, I did a work experience scheme at a little racing car manufacturer, which led to me supporting and running racing cars until I left university. I was never good enough to stay in that world. But what it meant was I was very employable compared to other people, because I didn't have the best degree. Well, I did a right degree, but it was a bit of it's the industrial design rather than engineering. But I had customer service experience. I had proof that I could work under pressure. So we would always look at somebody who, you know, we don't want the cleverest, but somebody can apply it elsewhere, right?
Like part-time work, right? So it's hard, right? So you see stats now, like kids can't find part-time work because of minimum wage. We go to the cost of things again. But for me, that would always be something I'm looking for. So I'm literally going down and I'm looking and seeing, you know, when they're at university, did they actually go out and have to work in a bar or whatever, and they're having to interact with people. I don't care whether it's a software engineer or whether it's a salesperson or an operations person. Those sort of things, I personally, I like to see that. It shows me they're hardworking people and they can deal with people as well.
You get to a situation as well, because you've also got to maybe look at the metric difference as well, because work experience, I mean, we were looking at how we could get somebody on work experience. You go, oh, that's great, we'll take them to a site. That can't take to a site. Oh, that's great, we'll get them doing bench test trials. No, you can't do that. But one thing I've been playing around at in my head is when we look at kind of the people coming through, there's stuff that we could be looking at, like what they've done on Minecraft, what they've done on Roblox. You know, because
thought process, right?
Because you've got this situation. Sorry, I'll put the dogs in coughing. It's just ruined your sound down, isn't it? Is that you've got really, if anybody's playing Minecraft or Roblox, I've got them right, haven't I? Yeah, right. Is they're building their own little STEM worlds, and if you join that up, so I almost in a situation, I'm wondering if I haven't got somebody with work experience. Should I actually see what they do for hobbies and what have they actually built on those platforms? Because you look at what they're designing with relative ease and the depth and detail that they can do in different projects at the same time. So maybe there's a digital footprint for those coming through that we ought to be looking at as well.
A couple of things I say to them. So I just had, 2 weeks ago, I had 5 engineering classes back to back, which was a long day. However, every single class at the end asked me the same thing. Like, we're applying for placements, we're applying for jobs, like, how do we get seen, because they're all struggling. I said, every single class asked, put your hand up if you pick the phone up.
How
many do you think pick the phone up? No, and I did caveat it with, When I was in your position, I wouldn't have picked the phone up either. However, it was easier for me to get an apprenticeship 15 years ago than it is now. But if you're one of 100 CVs and you're on that hiring manager's desk and you're the one person that calls up to say, hey, I love what you do and it relates to this, well, who are you going to remember? That one person?
Or a call. I completely agree with you. Because in the end, they need to stand out.
Yeah.
And it needs to be authentic as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lad, we've just taken on. So we had no need for a junior engineer. We actually want senior engineers. And I won't mention his name in case he fails his probation. But it's like really good. But lad, we took on. We took him on as a punt. Seems to be doing okay, and he sent LinkedIn messages to the Grunwald account, to my account, to Sam's account, justifying why. I mean, he knew of the business through one of our engineers, justifying why he should come work for us.
Good.
And each 3 message was different. So
he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
And then we rang him, and he answered.
Yeah,
nice. You know, and that makes the difference. Communication.
Yeah, that's something that we're missing, really.
It is, absolutely it is. I mean, you know, I feel we despair as, you haven't got this yet because you're only 2, well, I hope you haven't got this yet, but I despair of giving my eldest a mobile phone, and every time I ring it, she never answers.
Yeah.
And there's this disconnect that these things we have in our hand, their core function, you know, I really have got a busy operations day at Grunwald today, and if I'd done it all on email, none of it would have got done.
Yeah.
I did it in email, and before I came here, I rung everybody up and said, are you cool with this? Because you get rid of the nuance, right? And you stand out.
Yeah, and the other advice is go and get some experience. And we've just touched on that, but I said to them all, like, how many of you have just gone on Google Maps and looked at who's in your area? Because I know that the easy thing is, I can't commute. Like, they're too young for a driving license. Well, how many manufacturers with a roller shutter door and they are desperate for young talent because they've got no outreach, could you just walk to and knock on the door or ring up and say, I just want to shadow someone. I just want to sit in the office for a day or stand in the workshop and watch you, because they might not be able to weld something or anything yet. But like that on the CV to say, I worked at Joe Blogg's engineer for a week.
Think, most people are nice, right? And so, you know, and I think if there's a genuine request, I think, you know.
And everyone feels the pain of the talent pool anyway.
They get it.
Yeah.
So, I think it's good advice.
I think volunteering, I don't understand why there's a bit of a volunteering disconnect, really. So, because, for instance, a lot of things that weren't cool are now cool, but it's not joining up. So, steam trains, horrifically uncool until Francis, what do we call it? Bourgeois is yet another person I met. I didn't realise who it was. Everybody in the office went,
you met him?
I mean, there's stuff up there. I spoke to him. I spoke to him on a platform at a steam railway I took my dad to, and I had no idea who he was. I also had a conversation.
Did he have a camera on his head?
No, he didn't. And I was like, there's loads of people following him taking photos in the office. They went, yeah, that's Francis. I also spoke to Dizzy Rascal without realising who he was.
You're never going to get those 2 people mentioned in the
about the gear stick arrangement on a Renault 4. Because I was at a car concourse event in London. It's not me, but the podcast I like was recorded there, and they had this Renault 4 kind of art car, and there was this guy looking at the gear stick, and the gear stick on a Renault 4 does like that. I went, it's very weird that, and he was like, and we had a conversation about it, and then I walked across, and my brother was like, what were you just talking to Dizzy Rascal about? I was like, oh, okay.
You're so cool, James.
Yeah, I know. But
you are down with the kids.
I'm down with the kids. And but there's a volunteering element. Is that I volunteered at a motor racing team. And did other things. Is that these kids could be volunteering somewhere to get relevant experience. Go to your local, steam railway, I suppose. Go to your local, Duke of Edinburgh. There's stuff that they can be doing to get the skills.
So my son, my eldest son, he's like obsessed with cooking, right? And he wants to be a chef. And so my wife and I were recently in a nice restaurant for an anniversary. Got chatting to the head chef and told him about my son. Came over with a business card, I said, bring him in. This is in London, everything like that, you know. So took him in, looked after him, no problem, right? So I think it's about asking and about being prepared to do it. And I think people of our generation, whether it's, you know, business owners, business leaders, whatever, I think people will help.
Yes.
So I think your advice is sound. If someone came and there was, you know, they were nice and there was an opportunity, we would help them.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to clip that and I'm going to put it into schools because they really need to hear it.
It's key. Like, look at what is near you that is kind of relevant.
Yep.
If you think you want to be in engineering and you live by a canal, well, go and see if the local boatyard will help you paint a boat. You will learn something.
Welding the boat or
whatever.
Well,
exactly. You know, there's a world around you.
Yeah.
Right, let's get into the fun bit.
Yeah.
Our favourite segment, bullshit or backbone. So we're not taking any answers until you've decided on bullshit or backbone. No sitting on the fence. It's the integrator's fault when a project goes wrong. Should have a little egg timer for this coming up.
No, he's just thinking about his golf swing application. But apparently that went perfect.
Bullshit. Whose fault was it then?
Depends, right? So, you know, if there's been a poor spec, if there's been, you know, you could follow everything through, could be perfect, you know, everything could be to spec, get it in, production don't want to know. So production start, you know, sticking screwdrivers in it. And there's literally stuff I've seen, you know, so because they didn't get the full engagement of the business. Yep. So machine vision stuff works perfectly. The other way, you could have an integrator completely incompetent, you know, doesn't, you know, said they could do it, you know, put something in, it doesn't work. I've seen that as well. So you know, went with an answer that I think is more likely, but actually either could be true.
The UK lags behind in automation adoption because the technology doesn't exist.
Bullshit.
I thought that'd be the case.
The technology's there, right? So it's either about not willing to spend, not willing to change, or the fear of, and we're talking about vision here, the fear of vision, not understanding it, and all of that. But, you know, technology is not the problem, 100% not the problem. There is more than enough technology out there to solve almost every single problem that exists. The issue is education of the market, educating what can be done. So 100% disagree with that.
Fear. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it's a reoccurring thing, fear. There's a lot of fear to adopting anything.
Yep.
Anything automation-wise.
So our biggest competitor is they do nothing. Just status quo. So we might not, the end project might not get lost to another competitor or whatever. Yep. It just doesn't go ahead.
Yep.
And that's the, you know, if you look at stats internally, that would be the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
Two things I think, I mean, it's kind of big, I just say it in different podcasts now. The two things I think as an industry, and it starts with the trade association where we have been bad, is we've well, our technology is amazing. Why wouldn't you adopt it? Well, if I don't adopt it and it goes wrong, I lose my job.
Yeah.
And we lose sight of that. We lose sight of the jeopardy that
I 100% agree.
A project engineer is. But it's brilliant. Yeah, yes. But you say it's brilliant. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I lose my job.
100%.
And I got a mortgage. Yeah. And really, if you know, we all know it. If somebody's a project engineer or an engineer, you know, they if they get thrown off, lose their job because a project didn't go well, and they become the scapegoat, they've really only got 3 joker cards. They'll do it again. You know, there's and the world that will come down on them, the weight that will come down on them if they don't deliver that product. You know, so we have to make sure that we deal with that fear element in how we communicate with customers, whether it be in, you know, OEMs like Allan does or end users like I do. And then the other thing is as well is that, and I know we've touched on it, is that we've really messed up on people versus technology. You know, is that this robot will save you this person. Well, that's great. I'm a person. Well, I don't want to be replaced by technology. This vision system we'll replace these two people. Great, you've touched on it. What am I going to do with these two people?
Yeah, I was just going to say.
We have absolutely. I get so annoyed when I read articles, and we're still peddling it now. Not automate, thank God. Is that person versus technology, person versus robot, person versus camera? No, it's together. So we've got to deal with the comms of fear. So I think those who will do really well in selling anything in industrial automation will prove that people that the fear is not so bad, or if the problem appears, we will unbugger it together. And I'd hope that was what we're doing. I think you do a very good job at portraying that the fear is not so bad. I think I do a better job at saying it might go wrong, but we'll unbugger it together. But, the same different styles work. And start pitching bloody technology against people. Oh, a robot never goes on a break. Oh, a robot can do it. Shut up.
The problem is, what's the alternative?
The alternative is it works together. If you employ this robotic technology or this vision technology together, you remain competitive, you get the most out of your people, and you get productivity. That's what it is.
I agree.
It's just on a rant.
Does a rant.
Yeah, you just gotta let them go sometimes, don't you?
Just gotta let them go.
Can we talk? So apparently you've got a WhatsApp group about my rants, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That one will make it in there.
Yeah, okay.
Automation system integrators are a better place to deliver vision projects.
Backbone, I think, with the right knowledge, right? So I think one of the things you're seeing now in the UK is, go back 10 years ago, most of the machine vision integrators, 1 person, 2 person, 3 person. Now you're starting to see things really hot up with like big companies, 100 person company, 200 person company. And by the way, I don't think that means the end for the small guy, and I wouldn't want it to be. But I think that's great because now there's a different type of customer. You just covered it there in terms of risk profile. If I go with these guys and it doesn't work, I'm going to get fired. Yeah. Versus, I'm going to buy from the equivalent IBM or big automation company, and they're going to put it in and they're going to support the hell out of it. I know that I'm not going to get fired for that. And these guys have got a track record of supporting projects and being there for the next 20 years. I think that's really important for our industry. So, but again, these guys still need the knowledge, right? So it depends on the company. But there is a massive shift I see in the UK and across Europe where big companies are coming in. Before it would be like, oh, that's something that happens in Germany. Mm-hmm. Whereas now that's something that happens here. So there's something that's happened more in Ireland sometimes than it has here, because of the medtech industry and stuff like that. But here it's happening, and it's a good thing.
I suppose for the smaller integrators, that's where it's important to have.
So they'll just have to go up, right? So in my mind, but people are always going to buy from people like that because they can
Personal
be
touch.
Agile. They can be personal touch. They can collaborate with multiple machine builders and stuff like that. And that's what you're sort of seeing now. You're seeing companies become agnostic on technology. So before,
you said agnostic. I took the piss out of you for saying that last time.
Before you might have had companies that just stuck to Cognix, for example. Yeah. Now that's happening less and less now. People, and rightly so, because they realise they're good at what they do, and then they can go and work with different machine builders, and they've understood their strength. Their strength isn't the fact they've just got a contract. Their strength is they're good at what they do. So I think the ecosystem, it'll all be fine. It just means there's big players coming, and that's where the industry will grow.
I think you need both big players and little disruptors and somewhere in the middle. Because you'll need people who'll need the reassurance of the big entity to suppress the fear. You'll need other people. You'll need the justification of that there's a person backing it. We've just taken on or in the process of putting in our new engineering-based CRM at our place, and we are getting rid of one after 3 years. Because on paper it was the best entity, but we had no support. Yeah. So we've actually gone to a much, much smaller business, but that is biased towards on-site working. And I can't stop them from coming to the office to check we're okay. The guy who's based in Germany spent Friday in our barn in Lincolnshire. I believe he was pitching his wares to you the day before, by the way. But he wasn't coming to upsell us.
He's a nice guy, though, isn't he?
He is a nice guy, isn't he? So maybe he'll sponsor this podcast. What I'm saying is, when I look at that CRM, I went with somebody big because I felt it was off the peg and I needed that initial reassurance.
Yep.
Now, actually, on the second version of it, I've learned from it and I actually need somebody to stand by.
It was the fear the first time around.
So I've been through that process. My initial fear factor was, well, I don't know, this just looks like somebody, I don't know if they're just operating out their bicycle shed, bearing in mind that I used to. But you go, but I just need something off the peg.
Yeah.
So we went down a route with a project management-based CRM, which has got us to a point, but we hit a glass ceiling very high. Then you go, actually, well, my second batch of fear is I don't want that experience that I'm ticket number 2,000 in the queue. So I actually need somebody personal. So, you need both to suppress the fear for different things. And that would relate to anything.
Yeah, I've been through it myself.
Yeah.
That we're the disruptor.
Yeah.
And people stick with what they know.
Yes.
Until what they know becomes out of date.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't asked you that you wish we had?
No, I think you've done a good job, right? So I think, I don't know how many people
We'll clip that.
that watch this.
You said it right.
Know about vision, right? And so, I think hopefully give some insights on that. And no.
Okay. Let's do the final segment then. This one's called Say the Quiet Part Out Loud. We want to know something that most people are ignoring. So what do manufacturers really need to hear about machine vision?
Yeah, I think it's this knowledge thing, right? So we just talked about customer care there, right? And so, ClearView's a distribution business run by an engineer, right? So I care about that. So we joked earlier about being a nerd. We have competitors that are run by private equity based whatever, and they will quite rightly for that business look after the bottom line to the nth degree. I think that's important for us too, but it's not the be all end all. There's times where we have completely stuck by a project and a customer to the detriment of our bottom line because that was the right thing to do. And I think it's everything here, we screw up more often than not, but we care, right? So we have this thing, engineering happiness, and it's like it's because we're obsessed with making people happy, right? And so the data driven side of me really cares about net promoter score and employee net promoter score, and I'm checking it and seeing where it's going wrong. But when someone does hit the unhappy button, that's okay because we do something about it. And it's not like we're chastising the person internally that's done it. It's just about making sure we fix it. And so
that's where he's very good.
And so it's the care, and it's so it's taken me a long time to articulate that in terms of the company narrative. But and that's clever external guys that have listened and then sort of been able to capture that story. But that's genuine all the way through, And so there are times where we do screw up, and we have screwed up with customers, but we fix it. And even if it costs us, we'll fix it. And I can give several examples of that. And so I think that's a hard thing to sell, right? Because
your project might go wrong.
It's but that's the reality. Is most projects, whether you're an OEM designing something or you're an end user, it will go wrong at some point. And so you need someone that's going to help you get through it, not just from I know how to fix this, but actually it's literally going to be bothered to turn up again. So we've been bad here in, historically SLAs and stuff like that. I'm proud of that now because it hasn't been at the forefront of what we're bothered about. Yeah. It's actually bothered about making sure the customer's happy. Now we'll put those things in place. So there's a little bit of maybe self-promotion going on there, but I care about that. So, and on a brochure for a big fancy competitors of ours, that's not seen.
Where ClearView could do anything, why, what they choose to do in the future his biggest talent for me is nothing to do with industry. I'm going to say something nice about you now. We can clip it. Like next time, I'm very rude to you, or rude about the vision community, and just say it's barcode scanning. Get over yourself. Where I wish I was better, more like him, is Allan has got a really good sense of personality versus system. That is where this business, where he's best as a leader and as a business person, is that it is very easy to pinball between being personality led. Hey, everybody okay? Let's be great. No systems, and all the systems, and it restricts somebody. My appreciation of Allan is, I mean, he's pinballed like the rest of us the first 10 years, but where he is now is that I don't think you will find many SME leaders. I'm certainly not one. I'm very too much personality biased, and then people have to backfill for me. He's found that middle ground. So whatever ClearView do, whether this does end up being a bowling alley, the people and the structure,
watch this space.
The people and the structure will be the right blend.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's a great time to end the podcast then. We'll end on a high note.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
thank you for that. Thanks for hosting us as well.
No, you're fine.